The chapel in Millfield, Montana was nothing like the grand cathedrals I'd seen in magazines. Just weathered wood and stained glass that caught the afternoon light in broken rainbows across the worn pews. I knelt there that Tuesday, my knees already aching against the hard floor, and whispered the same prayer I'd been carrying for months. Give me strength. I breathed into the quiet air. Help me find the courage to be who I'm meant to be. I was 24 and felt like I was drowning in my own skin. Working in my father's hardware store, living in the same room I'd had since childhood, pretending to be someone I wasn't for the sake of keeping peace in a town where everyone knew everyone else's business. The weight of it all pressed down on my shoulders like a physical thing. What I didn't expect was for my prayer to be answered in the form of weak knees, literally. I tried to stand after my prayer, but my legs gave out completely. I crashed into the pew behind me with a thud that echoed through the empty chapel, my face burning with embarrassment even though no one was there to see. Easy there. The voice came from behind me, warm and concerned. Are you all right? I turned to find a man about my age standing in the doorway, backlit by the late afternoon sun streaming through the open doors. He had sandy hair that looked like he'd been running his hands through it, and eyes the color of lake water in summer. There was something gentle about the way he moved as he approached, like he was afraid of startling me. I'm fine, I said, though my voice came out shakier than I intended. Just lost my balance. He extended a hand to help me up, and when our fingers touched, I felt something I'd never experienced before, a spark of recognition, like my soul was saying, "Oh, there you are, I've been waiting for you." "I'm Dewey," he said, his smile soft and genuine. "Dewey Blackwood. I just moved to town last week." "Emerson," I replied, still holding his hand longer than was probably appropriate. "Emerson Finch. Welcome to Millfield, though I should warn you, there's not much here." "I don't know about that," he said, his eyes never leaving mine. I think I might have just found exactly what I was looking for. Dewey had come to Millfield to take over as the town's new librarian, replacing Mrs. Henderson, who'd finally retired after 47 years of service. It was a job that paid almost nothing and came with a tiny apartment above the library, but he seemed genuinely excited about it. "I like quiet places," he told me the next day when he came into the hardware store looking for supplies to fix a leaky faucet. "Places where you can actually think." I found myself watching him as he examined different washers and pipe fittings, noting the careful way he handled everything, the way he read the labels thoroughly before making a selection. There was something methodical and peaceful about him that made me want to slow down, to pay attention to details I usually rush past. "You're not from around here," I said, though it wasn't really a question. Everything about him, from his clothes to the way he spoke, marked him as someone from elsewhere. "Portland," he confirmed. "Oregon, not Maine. I needed a change of scenery." "And you chose Montana?" I couldn't keep the surprise out of my voice. Most people are trying to get out of places like this, not into them. He was quiet for a moment, turning a brass fitting over in his hands. "Sometimes you have to go somewhere completely different to figure out who you really are," he said finally. "Sometimes you have to get away from all the noise and expectations to hear your own voice." His words hit me like a punch to the chest. I've been feeling exactly that way for years, but had never been able to put it into words. "That'll be $12.50, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. When he handed me the money, our fingers brushed again, and I saw something in his eyes that made my heart race. Understanding, maybe, or recognition. Like he could see right through the version of myself I presented to the world and into the person I really was underneath. The library stayed open late on Thursdays, and I started finding excuses to walk past on my way home from the store. Usually, I could see Dewey through the windows, shelving books or working at the circulation desk, his face peaceful in the warm lamplight. One Thursday evening in late September, I finally worked up the courage to go inside. "We're technically closed," he said when the bell above the door chimed, but he was smiling. "But I suppose I could make an exception." The library felt different at night, more intimate, like a secret space carved out from the rest of the world. I wandered through the stacks, running my fingers along book spines, very aware of Dewey's presence somewhere behind me. "What are you looking for?" he asked, appearing at the end of the aisle where I was pretending to browse. "I don't know," I admitted. "Something different, I guess. Something that might help me understand." "Understand what?" I turned to face him, and in the dim light between the shelves, with no one else around for miles, I felt brave enough to tell him the truth. "Myself," I said. "I feel like I've been living someone else's life for so long that I've forgotten who I actually am." He stepped closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something warm and woodsy that made me think of campfires and autumn leaves. "I know that feeling," he said quietly. "I spent years trying to be the person everyone expected me to be. It nearly killed me. What changed? I realized that the people who really matter, the people worth keeping in your life, they're going to love you for who you are, not who you pretend to be. And the ones who don't." He shrugged. "Maybe they weren't as important as I thought they were." We stood there in the quiet, the weight of unspoken truths hanging between us. I wanted to tell him everything about the dreams I'd been having, about the way I felt when I looked at him, about the prayers I whispered in the dark. But the words stuck in my throat, held back by 24 years of small-town conditioning. "Emerson," he said, and the way he said my name made my knees weak all over again. "Yeah, would you like to have dinner with me sometime? I mean, really have dinner, not just running into each other around town." My heart hammered against my ribs. "I like that," I managed to say. "I like that a lot." We met at the diner on Main Street on a Friday night, both of us nervous and trying to hide it. Dewey had changed into a button-down shirt that brought out the blue in his eyes, and I'd spent an embarrassing amount of time in front of the mirror, trying to tame my unruly dark hair. "So," he said after we'd ordered, "tell me about growing up in Millfield. What was it like?" I found myself telling him things I'd never told anyone, about feeling like an outsider in my own hometown, about the crushing weight of expectations I could never seem to meet, about the loneliness that followed me everywhere, even when I was surrounded by people. "I always felt like I was acting," I said, pushing mashed potatoes around my plate. "Like I was playing a character in someone else's story." "What would your story look like?" he asked. "If you were writing it yourself?" The question caught me off guard. I never really thought about it that way before. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I guess I want to be brave enough to be honest about who I am. I want to find someone who understood me, really understood me, not just the version of me they wanted to see." "That sounds like a good story," he said, and his smile was so warm it made my chest ache. We talked until the diner closed, and then we walked slowly through the empty streets, neither of us wanting the evening to end. When we reached the library, he stopped and turned to face me. "I had a really good time tonight," he said. "Me too." We stood there in the glow of the streetlight, the air between us charged with possibility. I could feel him wanting to say something more, could see the words forming and dissolving on his lips. "Emerson," he said finally, "I want you to know that whatever you're going through, whatever you're figuring out about yourself, you don't have to figure it out alone." The kindness in his voice broke something open inside me. Before I could stop myself, I reached out and touched his hand. "I've never felt like this before," I whispered. "About anyone." "Like what?" "Like I might actually be brave enough to be myself." He squeezed my hand gently. "You are brave, Emerson. Braver than you know." When he leaned in and kissed me, soft and tentative under the Montana stars, I felt like I was finally truly awake for the first time in my life. 6 months later, I was helping Dewey paint the walls of our apartment, the one above the library that had become our shared space, our sanctuary. My father had struggled with my decision to move in with Dewey, but he was trying to understand, and that was enough for now. "You know what I realized?" I said, setting down my paintbrush and turning to look at him. He had a streak of pale yellow paint across his cheek and was concentrating intensely on getting the edges just right. "What's that?" That night, I prayed for strength. I thought I was asking for the courage to keep pretending, to keep being who everyone expected me to be. But what I really needed was the strength to stop pretending. He smiled, the smile that had become my favorite thing in the world. Sometimes the universe gives us exactly what we need, even when we don't know how to ask for it. My knees still go weak when I look at you, I admitted, feeling heat rise in my cheeks. Good, he said, pulling me closer. I'd hate to think I was losing my touch. Outside, the sun was setting over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Inside our little apartment, with paint-stained hands and hearts full of hope, we were building something new, a life that was entirely our own, a love story that no one else had written for us. I had prayed for strength and been given weak knees. It turned out to be the best answered prayer of my life.